Money mistakes can be extremely costly, and boy, let me tell you, we've made plenty of them. Fortunately for you, Drew and I have learned by fire and are here to share with you some of the stories around our biggest mistakes we've made and what we would have done differently. Here are 10 of the biggest money mistakes we've made in our 20s. Hello, neighbor, and welcome to episode 10 of the Neighborhood Money Podcast. Today, here in the neighborhood studio, it is an extremely special day as it is Drew's 29th birthday. Man, how does it feel to be in your final year of your 20s?
Honestly, I still feel like I'm 20 or 21. I don't know where these years keep going, and I don't make that big of a deal on my birthdays. So actually, I almost thought I was turning 28 this year.
It's
I
interesting
don't
as you get older, those years become harder and harder to remember exactly what age you are. So I definitely get that. Today, here in the neighborhood, it is episode 10. So we are super excited to get to the double digits. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's Drew's 29th birthday. And so we thought we would bring to you the 10 biggest money mistakes that Drew and I have made, five each in our 20s, and really talk through each one and what we would have done differently. So really excited to dive into this
Mhm.
episode today and provide all of you what those big money mistakes were.
Yeah, nothing says birthday like talking about our mistakes. Could be a present for all you guys, I guess.
It's always good to reflect and revisit and to share with you, the neighbor, what we would have done differently. So maybe you don't have to make those mistakes just like us. But
Yeah.
before we get there, if you want to support this podcast, if you're listening to the audio version, go ahead and subscribe to whatever podcast platform you're on. Rate and review the podcast if you find value. If you're watching over on YouTube, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video. All of that stuff goes an extremely long way, and we could not be more thankful for you to support the Neighborhood Money Podcast. All right, Drew, we've got 10 money mistakes, five each. I think the way to do it is maybe we just go back and forth, going from
All
number
right.
five down to our number one money mistake. And Drew, I'll just pass it over to you. What's your number five money mistake?
Yeah, I'll say mine aren't in any particular order, so take it with a grain of salt as I'm saying them, all right?
All
But I'll
right.
start out with the first mistake is not for spending my money without a plan. And the reason I think about this is I go back to my first job out of college, I guess more of a career type of a job. And I wasn't used to making, more than your 10, $15 an hour at a summer job. So when the money started
Right.
coming in, I was like, oh man, I got all this money. I can do whatever the heck I want to. I'm a single guy. Rent's cheap.
Rolling
And
in the cash.
yeah, that's what I thought. So, I end up spending a lot of money going to the bars or making just dumb money mistakes. Even I ended up bought a four-wheeler that first year. I took out a loan for it, and it's just being a toy like that should have been something I either save up for and pay cash for, or just really nothing I needed at the time, especially when I didn't
Right.
have any storage for it. But I would definitely say if I could go back looking at that mistake there, I should have really taken the time to sit back, kind of see how that money comes in month to month, see where I'm at, make a budget, plan it out, and really have an idea of where I want my money going instead of just drinking it away at bars,
Spending
I
it out at the
guess,
bars.
or going out to eat or not making a
Right.
lunch. All of those little things.
Especially for those big purchases like a four-wheeler, you need to like plan ahead and not necessarily that you're saying that you were impulse buying it, but
It was an
maybe
impulse buy.
well, I redact that statement. But if you do look at those bigger purchases, like take some time to really think through, do you actually need it? Especially when you're younger, because when you
Mhm.
invest that money, the monthly payment in the case of your four-wheeler, that's going to go a long ways. And we're going to dive into this a lot, I think, here in this episode. But compound interest is so critical when you're younger.
Yeah, absolutely. Just having that plan for your money, I think, is just huge because you wouldn't realize how much money you just waste if you don't have a plan with it. I bet I spent thousands of dollars on just takeout,
Oh, for
and
sure.
I've said it again. Everybody's gonna think I'm a drunk here, but at the bar.
It's easy though when you're young and you
Yeah,
want to go out and you want to have fun, you want to have experience. It's easy to get away. And we're not saying don't do that stuff, right, Drew? It's just
yeah,
have a plan and make sure that you're cognizant and intentional with the money that you're making. I think that really dives into my number five. Again, I'm not in any order either.
Mhm.
My fifth money mistake is paying unnecessary late fees. And so, again, it's not having a plan, but just not being proactive when it comes to certain things. And I
Mhm.
know if I look back, I've never missed a credit card payment, but I have mistakenly not set up auto pay on a couple of bills that I had, specifically like HOA bills for my house, where if I missed a payment, you're going to get
Mhm.
charged that $25. And yes, it's not a lot of money. And yes, it's not necessarily a big money mistake,
Yeah.
but those things definitely can add up if you're not on top of it. And setting up auto pay is one of the easiest things you can do. And honestly, if I'm being fully transparent, Drew, the reason I didn't do it is because I would get the bill in the mail and I'd be like, oh, I'll do this later. I'll do this later.
I
And
do
all of a
that
sudden,
all the time.
it's
Well,
30,
not with
45
the bills
days.
now, but with just small tasks, something that
Right.
takes 2 seconds, and instead of just doing it right then, I just say, "Oh, it's gonna take me 2 seconds, so I'm just gonna put it off to the side for a sec," and the next thing you know, something else gets put on top of it, something else gets put on it,
Right.
you just forget about it. It slips your mind.
Exactly. So definitely just go ahead and just get that done. If I think I heard, I forget who exactly I heard it from, but if something takes you less than 5 minutes, just do it right away. And setting up auto pay maybe doesn't take 5 minutes, but it's going to take
Mhm.
less than 15. Get it done, and you're going to avoid any of those late fees.
Yeah, luckily, with the HOA fee being late, it's not really affecting too much, I would assume, in your financial life or credit life. But
Right.
if this becomes a recurring issue with, say, your credit card, I know one of the posts that we've had and we've talked about in our previous episodes is if you have a missed payment for 30 days or more, it's anywhere from the 17 to 83 point drop in your credit score, and
Hmm.
it was even if it was after 90 days mispaid, I think it was 23 to 133 point drop.
Right.
So those could add up and really hurt your credit score. And there could be other late payments that really affect you if it were to be, let's say, your insurance company.
Hmm.
You keep doing late payments on those, you'll end up losing your insurance. You don't want that to happen.
Right. Or get into a new bracket where maybe your premiums are going up, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But it's definitely something that's avoidable. Just make sure that you're ahead of it and on top of it.
Yeah. So I will go into my second. And as I said, they're in really no particular order, but this one may be probably my biggest money mistake. And this was chasing losses in the stock market. So now that I trade stocks for myself early on, you almost have that beginner's luck. You have a little bit of a plan. You have a couple green days in a row, and you get pretty excited and saying, "Hey, this is super easy."
Hmm.
Little did I know you have a red day and you go away from your plan. You say, I've had these green days. It's been pretty easy. So I'm just going to get into a position right now and I'll get my money back. I'll break even for the day, even maybe make some money. But more often than not, I saw myself going deeper in the hole. I started getting my
Sure.
emotions into it. I didn't follow my plan or my strategy, and from that, it just your hole gets deeper and deeper and deeper until you just have to cut your losses at some point and just say, I'm gonna slowly build it back. I know there was weeks when I would have, 1, 2, 3 weeks, all green weeks, significant amount of money in there, and one day chasing a loss took away 3 weeks worth of gains. And those are super costly, especially if it's gonna end up being potentially your livelihood.
Yeah, that's wild. So, Drew, how did you really balance the trading with emotions and really moving more towards controlling your emotions and really not trading with that, but more so play trading with your plan?
Kind of the harsh realities of it, of having those big mistakes and going through the highs and the highs, the lows and the low. And as you get in more of a routine with it, you just have to find your best way to take the emotion out of it. And you have
Hmm.
to tell yourself, I'm not going to have the biggest green days, but I'm not going to have the biggest red days either. And so that is one of those realizations that you have to come through, is it's more of a long-term deal. You have to cut your losses where you can so you can
Hmm.
survive for the next day. And you never know, sometimes there are those green days that can really bring you back, but you just have to stay without the emotions in it it's one of the most difficult things I've done it
Oh,
is
I'm
keeping
sure.
emotions out of it. But I've made a lot of progress with it. I still catch myself at times with the emotions getting into it, but it's by far much better without having my emotions in it at this point and being able to minimize those losses so I can trade the next day.
If I can translate to more
Mhm.
of the long-term view, right? So Drew
Mhm.
and I have fairly different investment strategies. Drew short-term trades stocks. I
Mhm.
take more of a long-term approach. And when I say long-term, I'm talking like 10, 15, 20-year period of time. And so if you're kind of fit into, my band or my camp, it's kind of the same thing. Like when markets dive, and markets will dive,
Mhm.
emotions come into play, and it's really challenging and not to just sell off and hold and not take those losses. But you have to understand that when you're investing, you have that plan set forth, or
Mhm.
you should have that plan set forth. And so
Yep.
just continue to stay consistent with the plan, understand that you're going to ride the waves, and just
Mhm.
stick to that plan as you move forward with your investing. And I think that really
Absolutely.
segues well, Drew, into my next money mistake. And that for me was I did not start a Roth IRA when I was 18. Gosh, I wish I would have, because it
Mhm.
is amazing the amount of power you really get starting early and really taking advantage of compound interest over the long term.
Yeah.
And so, if you're not familiar with compound interest, essentially what that's saying is when you put money into an investment and say that investment provides you interest or it provides you dividends, when you
Mhm.
reinvest that interest or dividends, that's now
Yeah.
going to pay you interest or dividends. And then on top of that, you also will see growth if you're investing into like an asset like the stock market. So, you're going to see some capital gains. And so, over time, let's just say at 18 you started with your initial $500 deposit into your
Mhm.
Roth IRA, and then each month you only put in $100. Like $100
Yeah.
is not a lot of money. Get sure when you're young and in college, it can be challenging to have that extra $100. But if you put $100 each month away starting at 18, and you assume a semi-conservative 8% annual growth rate,
Mhm.
that's going to be around $377,000 by the time you reach 60. And that's
Wow.
not increasing that $100 monthly investment. So I look back and I kind of kick myself every time I think about it, because when you start at 18 with Roth IRA, not only you're taking advantage of that compound interest, but
Mhm.
you're also taking advantage of tax-free growth. And that is super powerful over the long term.
Yeah, it's always sounds pretty cliche when they say invest early, and that was how I think about it when I look back at myself. In high school, we had an econ teacher that would say start investing now.
Hmm.
As I went into college, I would say every year I would have somebody saying invest yesterday,
Right.
for lack of better terms.
You hear that on
Uh,
this show. We talk about, start investing now, start investing now.
Absolutely, and so it does sound cliche when they say you should start saving for retirement as soon as you can because the compound interest is so important, and not a lot of times that message is heard and actually acted upon, and that can be a very costly monetary, I mean, actually physical dollar mistake that you could end up seeing in the future and really kicking yourself for.
I think another example here that I just want to share briefly is, think about that 18-year-old that started with 500. If they would have invested 270 per month, roughly
Mhm.
$270 per month, they're going to be a millionaire at 60. And I don't remember the exact numbers, but at 270 for that many years is roughly around like 150 to $200,000 of contributions. So you're you're going to see 850,000 dollars of just growth. And so it
And
is
that's not accounting for increased payments every month. It's still that
Yep.
270 you're saying
Right.
from when you were 18.
Absolutely. And so regardless, obviously we can't go back in time, but regardless where
Mhm.
you are, definitely think about opening up that Roth IRA or whatever retirement account, because it's never too late to start.
Yeah. I'm gonna piggyback on you for my next item,
Nice.
and
We have some
that
common themes.
yeah, and that is not setting up a retirement account with my first job or jobs after college as
Hmm.
soon as I got in there. before the first paycheck came. And the reason that ended up being such a costly mistake is I tend to be quite the procrastinator. So when I didn't initially set it up with the match or even set up put any contribution in, I was losing out on that free money and that start of that tax advantage plan. And I should have at that time maxed it out or added that
Hmm.
10, 15, 20% of my income going to retirement. And the reason I say that is if I were to have started out with already taking that amount out of my paycheck, I wouldn't have known the difference. I already was making more money than I was before, and I would have just learned to live off that. When you end up having your retirement account pull out after, or you set up after, your paycheck seems so much less, and it
Hmm.
mentally kind of frustrates you.
Especially when you start accounting for getting married, buying a house, mortgages, having kids, having pets. All that starts to stack on top of each other as you grow in age, right? And so when you're younger and you're starting that first job, you're coming out of college, you already were poor, right? Like you
Yep,
already didn't have money. And I'm
correct.
right with you. It's like, let's just continue to, live that way. But, unfortunately, some people like just don't open that up. And it can take quite a bit of time. Even if you miss out on a couple of years of investing, it's going to take a lot longer to catch up to be at where you should have been if you would have started earlier.
Yeah, so that's just one of those mistakes where procrastination got to me again, and you just lose out on that time, which you can never get back.
Right. So important. Time in the market is much more important than how much you're
Mhm.
putting in. So, Drew, let me move on to a little bit different of a topic, like get away a little bit from investing here. But my number three
Mhm.
money mistake is we leased a car probably 5 or so years ago. And let me tell you a little
Okay.
bit about this story. And it kind of has a two things to take away here. So, we had an old Elantra, Hyundai Elantra, and the exhaust system just was on the ground one day when we woke up. And Hannah and I are both working adults, and so we needed two vehicles because we didn't work in the same city. So
Yeah.
we had to run to the dealership, and we weren't prepared. We had, our emergency fund in place, and we were ready
Yep.
to, from a financial standpoint, put a down payment onto a car or whatever it was. But
Nice.
we weren't prepared to go out and buy a car that day. And so what we ended up doing is looked at a Jeep Compass and we're like, oh, you know what? Let's just lease it. And we
Yeah.
decided to lease it because we're like, well, we can always buy it at the end of the lease, right? We've talked about that a little bit here on the podcast.
Yeah.
But so we ended up leasing the car. 3 years later, it cost us around 14 to 15 grand of just depreciation that we ultimately paid. And we ended up just turning the car back in because it didn't fit our needs.
Yeah.
And so, looking back, I think there's two things to take away here. It's even if you don't think you're in a situation where you might need a new car or you might need, whatever it might be, do some planning with yourself or with your partner and think through, okay, what would happen if I needed to buy that new car or get a new vehicle?
Mhm.
And then I think the second thing is if I could have gone back, I would have definitely gone and just bought a 3 to 5 year old vehicle rather
Mhm.
than losing out on that $14,000 of depreciation like we did in the lease. Because even if we would have bought back the car at the end of the lease, we're still out that 14 grand and we paid the price, the depreciation price. And, unfortunately, 14 grand, at least to me, is a cheap, decent chunk of money. And it was a costly mistake that we did end up learning from.
It seems as though when you're in a rush situation and you're not prepared, that new shiny object tends to be sold a lot easier.
Hmm.
If you were to go and have your research and know what you guys wanted and maybe where you guys were going to be in the vehicle size you did, you would have a good idea of what exactly it is you're looking for and what you want and what comparables are. But when you're not used to knowing what the comparables are, and you walk in there and you see a new Jeep Compass and thinking, "Hey, it's the newest model. It looks pretty awesome. It's pretty comfortable, and the payment is about the same if you would went over here to maybe this used car." It's pretty easy in that moment just because you're in a rush. You need it done right now to
Hmm.
just go into something along those lines.
Right. And when you're in that rush, you're not thinking about insurance costs. You're not thinking about how much you're actually going to drive the vehicle and if you're going to go over on miles in a lease situation.
Yeah.
So it just makes life a lot easier when you plan ahead, even if you don't think that you're necessarily going to run into that scenario in the near future.
Yeah. So what's that make it? This is my third mistake. My next one is not paying attention to reoccurring payments. And this one, as far as like huge dollar amounts, maybe is not like the biggest mistake.
Hmm.
But as far as having subscriptions come through month after month that you did set up auto payment because you didn't want to miss these late payments for, next thing you know, if you're not double checking these statements and your recurring payments, every year most of these subscriptions will change price and increase. And
Right.
sometimes you buy an annual subscription that for a discount, but you don't remember when it comes up again. Is I
Right.
guess what I'm trying to say. And one of the times it really shined through my eyes was I was looking at, kind of where my monthly payments were. It was looking good. I was ahead of budget on everything, and I forgot about an annual subscription that I paid for that I no longer used anymore. I only used it for maybe the first 2 months of that first year, and out of nowhere, a four or $500 subscription payment came through, and I'm
Ouch.
like thinking, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
And that was because I wasn't taking that approach of looking at it monthly and is looking at it historically monthly at
Hmm.
my budget and saying, what did I do with last year at this time? Where was I? Was there something I did? Or really having that thought process through those payments. And I also see that a lot now with my internet, how that's constantly every year goes up. I think it's $10 a month,
Yeah.
and actually, that Mint app has helped me with that. So
Nice.
it will see that track it'll track that history, and when it ends up seeing those payments increase, it seems out of whack. It sent me alert, and that was what also helped me along with looking through my statement.
I think it's really easy to forget a lot of these subscriptions that we exist in now, right? So you have Netflix,
Mhm.
you have Disney Plus, you have
Yep.
Hulu, you have listening music services, you have workout services. You just
Yep.
have a lot of stuff
Maybe you
going
wanted the
on.
Hallmark one
Right.
just for Christmas season, and you
Right.
forgot to cancel
Exactly.
it.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I think it's really important, like you were saying, is just to be aware of what those subscriptions are and even more aware of the ones that you might not even really need, as well as those ones that increase, each and every year and
Yep.
just being on top of that.
I know there is one streaming service I will get periodically throughout the year, Showtime. It's just for the show Billions. I like the show
Mm.
Billions. It's kind of a big investment firm and kind of shady short seller, and I don't know why I like it, but it's really awesome in my opinion. So what I like to do is when it comes out with a new season, I let a couple weeks go or the full season, and then I'll hop into that subscription and I'll try watching everything in that first month, so I only have to pay about a month worth of that subscription, and then I'll
Sure.
cancel it. But I know the first time I did that, I forgot to cancel subscription, so I ended up paying for that subscription another 3, 4 months that I normally would not have.
Right. And those add up, right? It's not just, maybe it's like $30 a month. So it's not big dollars like you were saying, but they
Mhm.
definitely add up over time. And I don't like to just throw away $30 or whatever it
Yeah.
is.
That
So,
$30 can easily go into that emergency fund that you couldn't find any money for, and then next thing you know, I've been paying for 2 subscriptions that are worth almost 50 to $100 a month.
right.
Cancel them, starting up that emergency fund. If you couldn't find the money before, that could be the place to start.
Absolutely. So my number two on my list here is thinking back when I went to school or even before school, I didn't have a really sound college plan. And that really cost me in the long run. And so when I think back, I kind of chased that image of what freshman year of college is. So I went to
Mhm.
the University of Minnesota Duluth up in northern Minnesota, and I could have gone to our local community college and had that for free because my parents worked there. Actually, I
Yeah.
would have made money through Pell Grants and things like that. But I decided to go to a 4-year school That's a
Mhm.
fairly expensive school to go to when you account for tuition, room and board, and all of that.
Yeah.
And so I had to take out a student loan that was not necessary. And I think at the time it was around like 20-ish thousand dollars, which I actually left school with my 4-year degree. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later with $20,000 worth of student loans. So ultimately, my decision to not just go to junior college where it's, cheaper for most people, it was free
Mhm.
for me. I decided to go to a 4-year school and take out student loans really just to live that lifestyle of being a freshman at a 4-year university.
Yeah, it's amazing that there's not that education going into college, that there's not this, I don't know, prep class as your senior year or whatever it may be, because there's a lot of times that they push that you need to go to a certain college so you can get a certain job with a certain pay amount. Really, it's the amount what you'll get out of it, what you put into it. So it doesn't matter what
Right.
college it is. There's going to be great people at all of them. There's going to be great amenities at all of them. And education is, in my opinion, just some inner. Like you have to want to learn. You have to be willing to put in the work, and that work ethic and education will show through in any resume or any interview that you have going forward. It's just sad that there's not anybody telling you that getting prepped for college. You just have to think, people say this is the best college, I need to go there. And
Right.
it makes me sad on that side of it.
I mean, I definitely had parents that were like, try to take out as little student loans as you can. I was 19. I was dumb. I didn't listen. I was like, no, I want to go off to school.
Mhm.
I want to live that life, that freshman lifestyle.
I was the same way.
Right. But I think
It's
even in
easy to
addition,
fall into that.
for sure. I think even in addition though to the money side of it, at least for me, I didn't really even have a plan about what I was going to graduate in. I
Mhm.
know I came out of school and I was like, oh, I'll be a doctor. Then I'll
Yeah.
be, a teacher. And then I'll be a computer scientist or whatever it was. And I kept bouncing around. Fortunately for me, I found a career path that pays well. But I know there's a lot of
Mhm.
people out there that kind of bounce around and then don't find don't get a degree that's going to give them a good return on their investment. And I,
Yeah.
if looking back, I wish I would have taken more time in my senior year or even going, to 2 years of junior college, getting those prereqs done for free
Yeah.
and really thinking about, hey, okay, this is what I want to do. And I want to be very strategic around getting that 4-year degree in as little money as I can.
Yeah, with my 4-year degree, I was lucky enough where I was able to stick with my accounting program the whole way through. I don't know if part of that is I was lazy and I didn't want to look for a different degree,
Sure.
or if part of it was with my dad having a business, there's kind of that business background, and he always was telling me that accounting is always great. You
Hmm.
can find a lot of jobs in that. It doesn't have to be strictly in accounting, it can be in finance, it can be in any type of the business. It could be a part of that. And then I know there was also one thing that still sticks in my mind, and this could be part of it too, is when I was looking at a school to play baseball, and one of the coaches asked what I wanted to go in for, and I said, "Oh, I was thinking about accounting." And I remember him saying, "Oh, that's cool, but you're probably not going to graduate with that." And I think it might
Yeah.
have been just like, "Oh, you don't think I'll go graduate with it? Graduate with that? I'll
Yeah.
graduate with it."
Chip on your shoulder.
Yeah. So probably a combination of all three, but it's just kind of funny how I was lucky enough to stick with just accounting.
Right. And so I guess a good takeaway there is just plan ahead, like be cognizant. If you have students in your life that are going to college or planning on going to college shortly, try to urge them to think more actively around what they want to do. And then also be aware of the money side because that is so crucial. Because when you get into your post college working life, those loans are going to come back and bite you in the butt.
Yeah, when you have to start paying for them, you start seeing them, and your paycheck is gets a little angry with you.
Right. All right, Drew, off to your number one.
Well, it's not my number one, but it's my last one. Like I said, no specific order.
Right.
But this one isn't on the monetary side of it for money mistakes. This is on the education side of it. I wish I would have taken an active role in my financial education as soon as possible. I wish I would have done it in high school. I wish I could have done it more in college. And there was times where I thought I had that financial mindset or that entrepreneurial spirit, but really not until the last 3 or so years, I really took a big vested interest in reading books, watching
Hmm.
YouTube videos, seeing something that I've never heard about before. I know I probably would say the book that got me really thinking about it was that Rich Dad Poor Dad by that Robert Kiyosaki.
Hmm.
And
Great book.
it really changed the way my mind thought about money. And as I started looking into other streams of income, you start seeing very creative ways that people have made money. And it really just helps broaden your knowledge and have the ability to make a calculated risk on something you might not have known before.
I think that book lays out really well around buying assets versus liabilities. And I think in the society that we live in, we're really taught, or at least shown, to buy liabilities. So you buy the
Hmm.
car, you buy the nice house, you buy the
Yeah.
nice clothes. Whereas Robert Kiyosaki really teaches buy those assets that are going to make money to then buy those liabilities. And I think once you
Yeah.
have that mindset switch, I also read that book and it was an eye opener for me as well. Once you have that mindset switch, now you're looking for, okay, well, how do I buy assets that are going to give me money that I can
Hmm.
then use to buy other things?
I mean, I know we were talking last night a little bit as well, and just talking in the crypto world in general. I might have heard about Bitcoin in high school or college, but it would have been just very fast and in passing.
Hmm.
And that could be one where if I would have really taken an active role in my financial education and financial literacy, it could have been just a very calculated risk or tossing $100 at it and saying, if I lose it, I lose it. But it
Right.
could be, I like the technology, I like where it's going. There's a good possibility from the other information from the other financial information you bring in your head, you can see all the different ways it could be profitable or make money or really change the world. And that's just one of those things where, in my opinion, the more you know, the more you don't know, but it gives you it gives you a place to start and really start figuring it out.
And even if you're not interested in crypto or you're not interested in individual stock trading, still
Hmm.
increasing your financial literacy is
Hmm.
going to be extremely beneficial for you. And if you put it off, it's going to be extremely costly for you, again, because of compound interest and just investing your money and getting that compounding over the long term. And I agree with you, Drew, that it's not on my list, but it
Hmm.
is something that I wish I could have gone back when I was 16, 17, 18, and
Yeah.
really just started having that passion for personal finance. I'd be significantly more ahead than I am now. Granted, I've,
Yeah.
I and my family have been very fortunate in our career paths and whatnot, and we're sitting in a really good place. But just think of how far or how much further we would be down the financial independence path.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so I
Now for
guess
your
really,
last one.
yeah, to wrap it up, for me, I kind of alluded to this in the earlier one. They kind of go hand in hand. So my last one was college choice, but my biggest money mistake, and I'm super passionate about this, is I just took out student loans and I took out loans that I didn't need to take out. And the reason I did that, like I said, it was really to fund that lifestyle on my freshman year and really just to have those experiences of being a college freshman.
Yeah.
But when you get out of school and you're 20, $25,000 in debt, or, at my household, our student loans was $120,000 in student loan debt.
Hmm.
It's a huge, huge weight on you. And you don't know that when you're taking the loans out because they just are given to you. And you don't really understand what that's going to be like when you graduate and you have to start making back those payments. And so it was a really big burden on us to pay off $120,000 worth of student loans. And it's super unfortunate. And I wish that I would have had you know the the understanding of what that was like. Again, Drew, like we were saying, like we were told,
Hmm.
like, limit your loans, start investing early, all that stuff, but I never
Yeah.
listened, and so I took out those loans. And I had then obviously to pay them back. And it was just a huge hurdle in my early working career, and something that I really wish I could go back and just be more cognizant of spending in college, whether that's, going to free
It's
schooling or not spending $100 at the bar, whatever
it's a
it might
weird
be, and just being
it's a
aware of it.
weird place to be as a college kid as well. You're leaving your parents potentially for the first time, but you don't have necessarily the huge responsibility of really being an adult. So when you have that money coming in, your lifestyle isn't really like it was in high school, and it's really not what it's like after college. So
Right.
there's a lot more of worthless spending,
Hmm.
and you think that's maybe what adults do, and I'll have the money to pay it back. And as we were saying earlier, you don't realize how much these things add up. And at the end of the year and at the end of your degree, you're sitting there thinking, why did I take out that much? Why did I
Right.
have to stay in that apartment? Why did I have to go maybe party 4 days a week? Why
Right.
did I have to have a caribou coffee every single day?
Why did I not work more while I was in school? And right,
Yeah.
it's all that stuff. It adds up. And, I think what I would have done differently, obviously, is like I said, I would have gone to junior college and not taken out those loans. But I would have just been more aware of my spending. But then also, once I graduated, I would have just kicked those loans in the butt right away. I kind of put them off for a couple of years before we really hit them hard. Obviously, I was making the monthly payments that I needed to,
Yeah.
but I wish if I could have gone back, I would have just in those first 6 months just you know hit it hard as as much as I could with what I was making and what I had to pay to actually survive and live.
Yeah.
But they would have been out of my life so much sooner.
Absolutely. So, out of my mistakes, your mistakes, what would you say is one of your big key takeaways?
Yeah, I just hope that, going through these 10 mistakes of ours, you, our neighbor, can have some sort of takeaway on, maybe you are in the same boat as us and you can realize, hey, it's okay. Like I made this mistake. I can move forward. Or maybe you haven't made any of these mistakes, but you have considered them and it might change your mind or at least make you think twice about it. But I think my ultimate takeaway is just with anything in money in general, is just to be very intentional with your
Hmm.
money, learn from past mistakes. I think mistakes are good. Hopefully you can limit the actual size of, the monetary amount of those mistakes. And looking forward,
Yeah.
just make a plan and make sure that you stay true to your plan and really stay true to what you find value in this life and with your money.
For me, my takeaway from a lot, or from what you've said, from what I've said, would be on the lines of I've made a lot of mistakes, and I have, and I will probably make a lot more,
Hmm.
but it never discouraged me. It was every one of those mistakes were a learning experience for me. And now I know what not to do, or you see the bad side of it. And it's just another thing to help you go forward. There's a lot of times growing up that failure is always bad. And
Right.
you listen to a lot of these successful CEOs, and I can even see it in my life at times that those failures and those mistakes are what makes you better and pushes you forward. So those would be my big key takeaway is you can't be discouraged from those mistakes. You have to take them in stride, learn from them, and apply them in the future.
You can always bounce back. And especially if you're younger, you have a lot of time to make up if you've made a very large, financial money mistake. You've got time to make that up. And even if you're not younger and maybe you're closer to the retirement age,
Yeah.
there's always time to change and to make better decisions moving forward as long as you continue to learn from the past and the mistakes that you've made.
Yeah.
All right, Drew, that was awesome. That was, a lot of fun going through and reliving what we've done wrong with our money. Hopefully our neighbor here got some value out of the conversation. But what's been going on this last week in your neighborhood?
I was able to go up to the hunting shack this last weekend. I wasn't able to go on the Rough Grouse opener, it was Jordan Shower. So I was able to go up this past weekend, and I went up with my brothers and my dad and my father-in-law and a buddy, and it was a blast up there. We were able to do some
Nice.
hunting, which was awesome. We rode a lot of trails, and just was be able to be out in the wilderness was awesome. I love being out there. It's so quiet. You don't hear anything other than the people talking by you or sometimes maybe the generator. So it was awesome. I love going out there. It's kind of one of those battery recharges. I,
Right.
I was on the four-wheeler that I bought right away out of college. I still have it. It's paid for. Uh, and riding those trails all day, it was right around probably 60 miles we were guessing that we rode.
Wow.
I was sore though. Even though it was a battery recharge being out there, I was really sore.
Did you guys get many birds out there?
Yeah, we saw quite a bit. We got quite a bit. I don't know if we all got quite our limit,
Okay.
but it's probably a little bit less than that. But for the amount of people we had, that was still a lot of birds. And it was awesome. We ate really well one of the nights. We had the
Perfect.
ducks and the grouse, and it was beautiful.
Awesome.
Yeah. How about you?
So I decided that it was a good idea to sign up for a half marathon right when we were kicking off this podcast.
You
And
thought it was a
so
good idea.
this last week, yeah, you're telling me this last weekend we were up in northern Minnesota running the Ely half marathon. And I haven't trained a whole lot. And so I was super nervous for it. But Hannah and I typically run together and we ran all of our long runs over the training. I'll air quotes for my training, seeing that I only ran once per week. But we said that we were going to run together. And I told Hannah, I'm like, hey, around like mile 8 to 10, I'm going to start getting very fatigued. So I'm like, just leave
Yeah.
me. Like, I'll finish it off, but I just, it would be nice to run for that amount of time. And when we got to the start line, they did the gun and we were off. And there went Hannah as
Left you in
soon
the
as we
dust.
started, just gone. So left me in the dust. And I'm like, at first I was like, are you kidding me? I have no headphones on, nothing to listen to. So I'm like, I've got to run this whole 13.1 miles all by myself.
Why
And
didn't
then
you
I'm
have your
like,
headphones?
we don't typically run with headphones when we're together. We just chit chat the whole time. I shouldn't say the whole time. When I
Oh.
get tired, I get pretty quiet.
S-
But then I'm like, you know what? She's feeling good. She's probably gonna do really well in this race. So I was super pumped for her. And actually, it ended up being not my best time, but the best I've ever felt running a half marathon. And so I was super excited about that. And then the kicker on top of all of this, and really the reason why we signed up for this half, is that my mother in law, who had just turned 60 a while ago, actually signed up with us and ran her first half marathon
No
up in
way.
Ely. And so, yeah, so I was super
That's
proud of
awesome.
her. And she rocked it. She did so well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a big family event. The three of us running. We had another friend run with us. But yeah, it was awesome. I love
What
it.
was your time?
I ran it in 1 hour and 48 minutes. So
Okay.
just 2 minutes shy of what my personal record is.
Nice. Must have been
Yeah.
that barbecue you had the night before.
Yep. Neighbors Barbecue up in Tower, Minnesota. Highly recommend that too.
It's
That was
pretty awesome.
phenomenal.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
pretty awesome. That just about wraps up this week's episode. I was going to mention for people listening, I was thinking about posting on social media about the progress of our remodel. So if that's something that you want to see, just let us know in the comments or the reviews, and I'll
Right.
get a post out there on Instagram and Facebook and maybe even TikTok. So if that is
Heck
something
yeah.
you're doing, let us know, and I can add that out there. You can see the progress so far. We're about the 5th week in with a week left to go. So
That's wild. I can't believe it's been 5 weeks.
yeah, well, not a week left to go, probably a couple, but I think we're 5 weeks in.
There you go.
Yeah, well, outside of that, I want to thank everybody for listening, and we will see you guys next week in the neighborhood.